Yeah, you were asking about the hat. It's MAGA. Make America Great Again. That was the time when America was at its greatest. Back in the mid 80s and 90s, the early 2000s, when the internet wasn't such a big thing, you could grab them by the pussy if you had the money. If you had the money and the power, they would just let you do it. President said so himself. You gotta think that was a time back when, it's all the cocaine was flowing and women were, well, there were a lot of women that were having some hard times. And they needed to get a little extra money, so, we'd gladly oblige them. And the more money you had, the better the women that you could get. And you know what I mean by better. I mean, that's how he met Melania, right? And hey, at some point, we got to bring Epstein into this. The people at Epstein Island. Epstein was, well, one of the things that he did, he got a lot of those girls out of very difficult situations. Difficult financial situations, times when their lives would have been sacrificed to drugs and some violence on the street. He got him out of that place. He got him out of that, brought him to his island, and he trained him. He taught him how to do all these things, how to seduce rich and powerful men. And then, when they got old enough, he'd, loan them out to his friends. And, that's how you make those connections. That place was a powerhouse. That was the magic. That was the fantasy island. I mean, if you talk about it, not that one with the little guy. Yeah, this was the real fantasy island. This is where all the movers and shakers went. They had big money. They had big power. And they liked to spend their time, little of this, little of that. What happens on the island stays on the island. And, just because he was there doesn't mean that he partook of any of the particular flavors of the day, but he is an appreciator of beautiful women. I mean, you'd know that from what he said. He talked about his daughter seeming so pretty, and all the other stuff that goes on. It's just when you have that much money and power, that was a time when you could take that, when you could just do those things. You could slap your waitress on the ass and give her a $20 tip, and she'd be happy for the rest of the night. Not so much anymore now. You got the internet. You got all these crazy lefties that are talking about, women's rights and just, all this other crap. We don't need any of that woke bullshit no more. We want to get back to a time when women knew their place, and that was where they were meant to be. So yeah, let's make America great again, people.
So, yeah, bit of a serious bent now. I look totally ridiculous in this. This was really hard to do, okay? I was around in that period, and I worked at strip clubs in that period, and I was a first-hand person who was, with a lot of these women that were working the industry. And I got to know them, and I got to like some of them, so we got to be good friends. There's some craziness there, and some not good adjustments for a lot of them, but they, for the most part, they were there working. They were there trying to get money, and they did really well. But when I started investigating into this, I got into Jeffrey Epstein, and I got to researching Epstein. And he started out in the 1970s as a high school teacher. Very charismatic. Very popular. And his charisma was so off the charts that he made friends and got to know these very, very, we'll call them rich and powerful people in the area. He got to meet one that was, his daughter was being taught by Jeffrey Epstein, the dad was an investment banker, and Jeffrey was like, oh, that's a place that I want to be. That's a place that I want to be moving and shaking. I know how to do all these things. And so he ended up getting a job. And the company that he got a job at was Bear Stearns. And if that name sounds familiar to you, you probably remember the great economic crash of 2008. Epstein was very, very principled in that. He was the one that came up with a lot of those ideas, like the collateralized debt obligations, where you take all of these, subprime loans and combine them into one piece and have that as an object that you could invest in. And that money just came flowing in, and that was how he made his money. And he made enough money to buy himself a private island. And yeah, he got underage girls, and some of them he took off the street. He convinced them with his charisma and some other people to do all this stuff because they could lead this fantastic life full of luxury and all of these wonderful things. And all they had to do was, put out a little. It's not anything personal. And then once they got to a certain age, he would, sometimes let his friends use them, for lack of a better term. And I've been trying to record this for about a month now. And I've tried a couple of other times and I couldn't. And I just did. So to all of you who, look at this. This is not me. This is obviously a character. I mean, it's a ridiculous beard. It's taped on with double stick tape, okay? Got it off Amazon. But I wanted to isolate myself from those words, because that is not me. And it's there aren't words that are sufficient to describe that level of psychopathic depravity. And I'm sorry that exists in the world. But we all know that there are a number of rich and powerful men that did that to these women. And some of these women know who those people are. And they're making their own list. So, hopefully we'll see something approaching justice anyway. We're not going to get justice for everything, but if we can get something approaching it, holding some rich and powerful people accountable for those actions, I think I would be okay with that. So, all right, I'm going to stop now because this thing itches like crazy, and I want to take it off and get on with my day. So, see you guys.